Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Habits of Influence, a podcast by entrepreneurs for entrepreneurs where we discuss the good, the bad, and the ugly sides of entrepreneurship and building a movement. And here with you, as usual, every single week is me, Magdalena Hanna, and my co-host,
Ian Manheimer.
And today we wanted to talk about the marketing trend or trends, the two kind of distinguished trends that are very often misused, in my opinion, but let's get into the topic. And that is being an underdog versus having a picture perfect life. And Ian, it usually is the case that being polarizing or being intense, should I say, or being very vibrant in your marketing is the way to go. And I completely get that. And that is where those trends have actually been created from. But is it time to actually let go of the sub stories? The sub stories, I mean, for the sake of marketing and not for the sake of sharing with people of what your life is all about. Because I, for the longest time, had that impression that people just use it for the sake of, as opposed to, just being authentic, and authentic being the key word here. Everybody wants to be authentic, but we have those picture perfect people that sit on the beach with a laptop, under a palm tree, or shooting their feet, with a ocean in the background. Or we have I just had a heart attack whilst I was having a car crash, and then I've got enlightened because I brushed my shoulders with death, and now I have a mission of helping people with XYZ. Do we not have anything in between? What do you think of the trend overall, first of all?
Well, as usual, I've got mixed opinions, and there's always variables. So, starting with the picture perfect life, I believe a lot of people use that, however you want to, I don't know what word to describe it, but use that tactic as a way to draw people. At least here in the States, everyone wants more. We want the boats, we want the cars, we want the fancy house, we want the vacations, and it's attractive to a lot of people. So if I show this wonderful everything somebody wants, they're going to either listen to me or want to follow me or buy what I have or do what I do or whatever it is to get to that life, whether it's fake, whether it's real, whether it's not. As we know, a lot of those people who post these things, they're it's not their materials, or even if it is, it's like, it's not one of those. We talked about this in an earlier episode, the overnight success thing. It takes a lot of blood, sweat, and hard work. And then the flip side, the underdog, yeah, there is a huge push right now about the authenticity and, the survivor mentality. And, I could tell my story of how I was, for me personally, the running joke when I was in middle school is I was most likely to be dead by 20, and all this because I was making bad choices. And it's real easy to focus on those things of, overcoming struggle, beating the odds, going through trials and tribulations and turning them into success stories. However, I agree with you when you say not using that as a method to marketing. There's one thing to be authentic and say, yeah, I really want to help people, or I want to share my story because, hey, if I went through this, somebody else might be going through it, or maybe I can help somebody else that was in a similar situation. But there are people like what you said that literally make up these stories about where they're at to get to that next level, or to get visibility, or to get people to buy into what they're doing, or to get money from somewhere because, oh, if I'm going through all this, then I can get a grant, or I can do, so there's manipulation and misuse of the quote unquote sob story versus the strategy of turning your struggles into a success and actually doing something different and making a difference in your life as well as other people's lives.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, using your story in marketing is one of the most powerful ways to, first of all, get connection with your audience. Second of all, build authority in whatever it is that you're doing. So treating your story as a case study, I understand the concept. In fact, the whole story building concept of the V, right? Where you start at a certain point and you have the V, the dip, where something really bad happens, and then you are being the hero of the story, overcoming the struggles. But like you have mentioned, what I mean here specifically is stretching the reality just for the sake of finding that sub story, even if you don't have one, because not everybody has brushed with death, not everybody had a out of their body experience or anything as deep, looking at it. The same as people on the picture perfect side might be stretching the reality or not using their own wealth, as you've noted in your response to me. And we have the fake it till you make it mentality with the people that have this, like, the picture perfect life. We've spoken about influencers in our previous episode and about the dark secrets behind the wealth and the accolades and the successes and the followers. And it's the same with anybody else who is in business presenting what they have. How many times have business owners been caught on a lie, called out for a scam just because somebody dug into the whole story and found that this is in fact untrue. But what also really, really makes me angry is that other side, kind of putting yourself down or trying to find something very, very sad in your life, even though there isn't any. And in fact, sometimes it's pushing it to the limits. And my story in all of that is, imagine I have actually met a person that I really looked up to. She was my mentor. I really admired her. Very, very successful person. No names named, of course, because out of respect, and also out of the fact that putting me as opposed to that person is like a David Goliath kind of situation. But that person has actually stole my story. And the purposes of when I met her in the beginning was me trying to, whilst I was creating my first program, actually. And as you know, I was very, very stressed out. It was my first one, my first ever course. It took me tons of time to finish up. But I found that in the very end, it was absolutely everything that I wanted and more. And whilst I was doing the program, I was speaking to that person. In fact, there probably even might be a footage of us speaking together somewhere on the interwebs. But in the end, I launched my program. Everything was fine. A few months passed, and here I am seeing a landing page. And guess what? I see a program that is scarily, eerily similar to my course. Of course, the names are changed, the components. Because every single component of a digital course has a name, a sexy name as well from the marketing standpoint. But generally, everything is the same as in my program. And if that wasn't enough, because I thought I was questioning my sanity when I saw that. It's like, okay, that might not be the case. This is a very successful person. I'm just starting out. What the heck's going on? Lots of questions coming through my head, and I sent it to a few of my students at the time, and I was like, man, am I going crazy, or is this like scarily similar to what I have done? And they went through the whole thing. It was like, bruh, that's actually the same as what you have done. It's just the names are changed, the components are changed, names of the components are changed, and obviously the name of the program is changed. And another few weeks pass after that, and I decided to have a look at, whenever there's a launch, a coach has a launch party, being like a free training or a webinar or stuff like that. So I went into the training, and part of that training obviously is always a story. Well, there you go. And I'm listening to that woman's story, and I'm hearing my own story. So not only did my program get blatantly stolen, but I actually was hearing over there, sitting in front of my computer, hearing my own bloody story referred back to me by somebody else. So,
somebody that you trusted too, right?
somebody that I trusted, yeah, somebody that I looked up to, somebody that I admired for years and years and years and years.
So
So
does it make
here
you
you are.
question? Go ahead.
Yeah, no, say what you want to say,
I
because
was like,
I've got a lot more, a lot more.
so when you go there, it almost makes you question their authenticity and say, how many other people's stories and programs have they stolen? And then it also it brings up another topic in general of when we're first starting out. A lot of times we are looking for help and we're looking for mentorship, we're looking for guidance. And I think a lot of times stuff like this does happen. You have this great business idea, and it's like I guess I could use my own example. Probably 2013, 14, 15, somewhere around there. I had this idea of something I wanted to start in my area. And I started like thinking about it and sharing with some close friends. And it's just the power of, I hate to say it, like the way the universe works, right? When you start talking about things, they start happening. And I would say, oh, I kind of want to create this type of thing. And next thing I would notice is there's that popping up somewhere. I'm like, crap, this person's still, like, I didn't talk to them, but here's my idea being done right in front of my eyes. I'm like, okay, well, what about this? And I start thinking about this. And then that starts, and it's like these things start happening, like whether it's the universe is stealing the ideas or the person you're talking to is sharing them, or they're taking it for themselves. But things start happening when we start sharing things. So it's really scary when you're starting out in business. I would caution people
Putting
to be
all
very
of your eggs into one basket and not
well.
really having the money or the funds yet to actually support your idea. And there you are having somebody who is in a very privileged position, just taking it all away from you with a smile on their face.
Yeah. And I just be very wary of who you are sharing information with and ideas and content and whatever. If it's a business idea, just be careful and making sure people, if you're sharing stuff, you're signing an NDA, like a non-disclosure agreement, or no compete clause,
Yeah, well,
or
sadly,
something.
this was public. My talks with that person were recorded and public, and they just went into the ether. If anything, I would suspect, somebody else hearing the chats and using the idea, but I never in a million years thought that the person that I looked up to and I trusted and seeked advice from would actually do this. So yeah, coming back to the subject. So because I don't want to lose it, that made me start, because I was fuming. You can imagine. I was so angry for so long, and in fact, I actually took a hiatus after that for a few months because I just couldn't figure out how I'm feeling and how I'm supposed to react in this situation. Obviously, from a legal standpoint, I had nothing. This person had everything. So, in the long run, or in the event of a court case or anything like that, my course was not trademarked, and I had no legal basis to protect myself. Not only that, I had no funds to protect myself and to take the case to the court in the first place. But it made me start to look into people's stories and notice that it's more common than we might think, stealing stories or making up stories or stretching the reality for the purposes of. And I just wanted to make this episode today to make people aware that this is in fact going on, because nothing works as good as a sob story, right? The hero's journey. Something very, very sad, dangerous happened, and then there is this switch to change, where the hero is coming out on top of it all, and now they're coming as the preacher, to help the masses with XYZ. So yeah,
So, question for you.
equally, yeah, equally as annoying as the picture perfect person. I would say.
So what advice or what tips and tricks would you recommend people to do that are starting out? How do you avoid that? How do you avoid having your ideas and content, stolen?
Do not ever share your ideas with anybody. I am a huge believer, and this situation has in fact taught me this and many previous ones, when it came to business, because this is not the first time this has happened. The first time in my line with my career that I'm in right now, but this has happened in the past. And never, never, ever, 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 ever There are no friends, there is no family when it comes to you trying to build something from scratch, especially implementing your idea. And talking to many entrepreneurs now, I see that this is not just my point of view. A lot of people do share that point of view, and always say, do not talk about what you're doing, rather show the results of what you've been doing. So this is the first thing I would really, really think about when you are first starting out, or when you have a brilliant idea. Because bear in mind, you're not the only person probably that will have this idea, but your approach to the idea is very unique just to you. So unless you actually, chat about it, or inform the whole world about it, like I did, silly. And unfortunately, what happened here is there's two programs that are mirror reflections, and maybe they can coexist. I'm not really promoting that program anymore that I built back then. They probably could coexist because there's millions and millions of people that might not know about the other one. But in the end, in the resolution, you've got two mirrored products that are completely the same. And obviously, authority of the person presenting the program is going to play a huge role in it. So yeah, paying attention to stories of people. How can we distinguish if a story is true or not? Well, it's very difficult with the pretenders of the picture perfect people, right? Because you can stand next to somebody's Ferrari, or even snap a photo in front of somebody else's house. It has happened multiple times. Pretending to be more than you are. It's kind of like a fake it till you make it mentality, right? I'm more of a star than I actually am. And I believe this is a very good marketing route. I'm not saying lie to people, but I'm saying it really works. The other one
Well,
works as well.
I was gonna say, I mean, in today's world, I mean, we have so much digital stuff. I mean, even here on a Zoom call, I could do a virtual background and make it look like I'm on the beach, or make it look like I'm in a mansion or whatever. I mean, there's so much virtual reality and artificial intelligence and everything out there that we can create anything. I can put myself. I'm sitting in my office right now, little room. I can put myself anywhere while we're sitting here talking.
Yeah.
And it's like, it's really, like you said, there's no real way to validate if somebody's real or not in that aspect, unless you're actually meeting with them.
Well, there actually is. There actually is. And it's a very little detail that people usually overlook and not pay attention to. And that's precisely this, the details. If somebody is usually not telling the truth about their story, they are being quite vague and quite general in their description of the situation. So, just scratching the surface, putting some adjectives into that, some descriptive words, but generally lacking emotion and connection to the story itself. And I know that not everybody will be able to do that, because you have to spend a lot of time trying to dissect copywriting, trying to get into psychology psychology of marketing, or how people use this. There are some, like I said, some very, very famous people who do it in a fantastic way, in a way that, when they tell the story, you're literally sitting with them in the room. In fact, that is what is being taught by the public speakers, the best public speakers in the world, make the people sit in the room with you. But if you are a little bit more focused, you will see that the story is lacking those details. And this would be a telltale sign of manipulation, of untrue story, or kind of exaggeration, right? Besides, we should by now, after so many Underdog, I don't know, I was living on the streets, now I'm a billionaire kind of story. We should, start being a little bit more weary that, first of all, they weren't as quick as described. Second of all, they weren't as smooth and painless as they are described. Or sometimes, sometimes there is, the help that is never mentioned, or that there's a lot of variables here. I just want people to know that it is a marketing plot. It's not a case of like, I'm so honest and I'm so generous with you and I love you so much because you love everybody online, because you just like, you go out there and you love everybody. I want to share authentically my story. The story is blatantly being used for the purposes of marketing, and it's great, and because it works. But where is this line that we shouldn't
You brought
cross?
up a really good point, and it just hit me when you were saying it. A lot of those people that have been through stuff, and there were people that helped them along, they will include that in their story. The ones who are authentic, they will say, I met this person, they helped me transform my life, or I had this really solid, I met my now wife and she believed in me, or the people who have really been through stuff. I think when you look back at it, it's not the me show.
Mm.
I mean, there are some people who had nobody and had nothing and had to pull themselves up and all that, but a lot of those people that have been through and have done these transformations will acknowledge, hey, if it wasn't for so and so, I wouldn't be here right now. If this person didn't help me, or I read this book, or something, that there are those. And I think you just hit a really good topic of those who are authentic are going to recognize, and those who are BSing are smoke and mirrors.
But then again, we can go into the rabbit hole a little bit deeper, because the character of the sage, the person, the mentor that you meet on your way, is part of a well-taught V story, right? When you're at the very bottom, you meet that sage that tells you something or shows you something that completely changes your world, right? So again, we could dig deeper into finding out, yeah, fine, that's great, but then again, it is a good marketer is going to know that you do meet a sage. Is going to know that you need to mention a person that has changed your life, or showed you a different path, or said something that impacted you so profoundly that you have changed your ways. And I mean, don't get me wrong, this episode is not to bash the any type of marketing, really, because like I said, they both work, they're both fantastic, and I really admire people who have had it hard. In fact, that they're obviously they're going to be much more admired than the people that just had it given to them, right? But it's just a case of being very, very weary that not all stories are equal and not all stories are necessarily true. And, we need to start being a little bit more discerning, a little bit more focused, and a little bit more choosy when it comes to the stories that we listen to, believe, and follow.
I agree. Like it.
All right, guys, so let's open up the floor to you. Have you had a situation where deep down inside of you, you were listening to someone's story and you thought to yourself, this is kind of exaggerated, isn't it? I don't necessarily feel it. I don't necessarily believe it. Or on the other end, did you have the stories that pulled you into towards the person that was telling the story to you and made you immediately make up your mind to, for example, take them as a mentor or listen to their advice or whatever it was that had an impact on your life? And which one do you think is better? Is it the picture perfect, fake it till you make it attitude, or is it the sub story? Which one, in your opinion, is more powerful? Drop your answers in the comments below, or if you're listening on a podcast, do share with us by sending us an email to habitofinfluence@gmail.com. And yeah, I think this concludes today's episode, Ian. We're just one episode away from taking a break from the finishing of season 1. I'm afraid there is no hiding it anymore. There's one more episode that we're having next week, which I really, really hope that you guys are going to tune into. And in order not to miss it, you have to press that little bell notification or like our podcast on your favorite platform. We're on all major podcast platforms. But guys, next week we are actually going to be sharing with you a kind of like a sum it up compilation of what we have learned in our combined 36 years of business. There's another year ahead of us, another opportunity. Ian is starting another interesting venture. I might actually start a new project myself. But yeah, there's so many opportunities ahead of us, and we are going to be sharing 5, each of us, 5 things that we've learned when we were building our businesses. So be sure not to miss this one. And today I'm going to thank you for tuning in, and I hope that you're going to be with us next week. All right, guys, thank you so very much. See you soon. See you next week. See you, Ian.
Bye.
Thank you so much.